All right, recording has started. What's going on, guys? Sky Pirate Actual here, owner of Cloaked Entry Co. Here with my buddy, the emergency expert, Chris. If you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and go ahead and plug yourself while you're at it.
What's going on, guys? As you said, I am the emergency expert coming at you for all things preparedness. Um, Looking forward to kind of doing more stuff with Sky Pirate like this and really breaking down things so that we can take what's there and apply it to our daily lives. And I think this is going to be a great one. I'm really glad you brought me in on this video.
Dude, likewise, man. And let's go ahead and chop it up. The video that we're kind of hopping into right now is from Garantham, and it is How to Escape the City or the Urban Evasion. So really cool topic, especially with, I would say, in the last 5 years, it's probably been a lot more prevalent than it ever would have been prior. Unless we're talking about way back, 20 years ago, LA riots type shit. But yeah, very, very interesting that this it happens to be the topic and it's being very, very well received. There's some stuff that I saw kind of missing, but we'll actually see because I didn't get to see to finish the video to absolute completion. So we are going to watch it. Chris, just let me know when you want to pause and then interject with
Yeah,
whatever.
I mean the first thing I want to say is, knowing Grantham's background, you know, he's considered an expert on this stuff,
Yeah,
and so yeah, our job here isn't to critique, but it's hopefully to like just add on to the
add
knowledge
to.
that's
Yeah.
there because it's only a 32-minute video. So if we can elaborate on some stuff and paint a clearer picture so you can apply it to your life, that's the whole point of these videos, not to cut apart, a
Right.
32-minute
Yeah.
video on
Yeah.
urban escape.
That's absolutely correct. Yes, we are not here to chop it up in any form of fashion. We are just here to add on if anything was missing. So plug a few holes. And granted, just like Chris said, it's only a 30-minute video, so it's only so much that's going to be explained in it. So with that being said, let's go ahead and let's jump into the video.
Let's go.
That riot's going on, they're going crazy right now. They're starting to shoot everyone. We need to get out of here right now. Come on.
He always has the great
Dude,
openings.
he's got some great intros, man.
They're always catchy.
The world lives in a urban environment, so if there's going to be,
I'm gonna turn up the volume here a little bit.
where you need to actually get out, it's probably going to happen in the city. You probably end up living in a city, and just like we talked about in our woods video, it might seem like this is something that is far away, that there's zero chance of it ever happening, and yet time and time again, whether it be from Ukraine or from the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, we have seen that the cities are often the areas where this is occurring. So when we're talking about evasion, when it comes to a urban setting, it could be for a variety of reasons. Anything from there's a terrorist attack in the city and you need to get out. There is a natural disaster and you need to get out. There are so many different reasons for needing to evade and get out of the city, and we're not going to specify exactly which is going to compel you to go, but we're going to talk about a lot of different scenarios, a lot of different ways to take care of this. And as always, the important thing is going to be that as far-fetched as this stuff may sound and as tinfoil hat as it may sound to talk about, information is free. So in today's video, we're going to be talking about urban evasion, escaping the city. Hopefully you guys learn a thing or two.
So
Now, the biggest
let's pause
sponsor
it
of the
right
channel
there real quick.
is, of course, our favorite.
Gotcha.
That would be the Sonora.
So one thing I think that's like super important to talk about that he said that he's not going to talk about that we can kind of elaborate on is like go no go criteria. And I think like just when it comes to disaster and just looking at preparedness in general, whether we're talking like weather events or we're talking riots, like we've seen in the past couple years, what are your criteria and where are you located within an urban center will really determine what that is. And so it's super important that, before we make any plans, we have to look at that route. And if it's heavily impacted, we better have an alternative route. If you can't take your major highway or major freeway out of the city, you better know the back roads and what places connect to where. You better know bike trails if you have to get out on foot because everything's locked down. And, on a personal note, here in Philly, we ended up having to leave the city. We ended up having to go northeast into some of these to this neighborhood where I was basically working a protection detail for it helping a buddy with a client of his. And, my wife, my dog, We all went up there and stayed with them for 9 days because the city had gotten that bad.
Right.
And my whole criteria was, one of the big ones was if they decide to lock down the city and they're going to be closing the major highways out, we're going to leave before that time. And that's what we did. We left
Right.
literally that's 6 hours before they completely locked down the city with the National Guard.
Right.
So,
and now the way I'm kind of looking at this right now, so he can kind of, the context here is, as he says, is while being hunted, right? Very different situation versus like it's just chaos. It's widespread. It is that you are now the target of a hunt, essentially, from some unsavory characters that have quite a bit of numbers on them, right?
Yep.
So obviously speed's a thing, and one thing I bring up, and this is not to shamelessly plug myself, but having that ability to gain entry to places and being able to lock them behind yourselves is damn near a fucking superpower when it comes to that, right? If I'm able to put a bunch of locked doors between me and my assailants, that's huge. And that also lends credence to another option as well, especially if I'm just by myself. If it's not me and my family, or even if it is me and my family, right? The better option may not be to escape on foot. It may be to stay in place and wait it out, right? If the cops are locking down the area, like, I don't know about you, but I can go without eating food for fucking 12 hours, right? Because it's, through the night into the morning, everything kind of cools off. It's a lot easier to just wait that out with some pretty guaranteed protection between me and the rest of the outside world, especially if I'm like in a place that you can't get to unless you have the key or unless you're one of us. A lot easier to do that and just put a bunch of locked obstacles between me and the people that are outside. So,
and that's a great point, right? Is that you should be evacuating when it is the last possible option. Like there's this whole fantasy of like, oh, I'm just going to bug it out and, do this and jump in my truck and then grab my bag. It's like, no, like, why would you leave all your food? Why would you leave all your supplies? Why would you leave your only real exterior protection unless you have, some sort of camper shell or something of that nature? It just doesn't make sense. So, something like this, I see as more of a war game for if I'm in another city, right? If I'm traveling, that's where I'm always worried about this because, and I'm sure they'll talk about it, but like, if I've been living in Philly for the past 5 years, I don't look like I belong in San Antonio, Texas.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm sure.
Like when I land, unless I'm preemptively thinking San Antonio, Texas, and I bring some boots with me, and a ball cap that's worn out, I'm gonna stick out the moment I hit the deck,
Right.
So that's this is really like I've taken a few of these courses, and they're really get you thinking about where am I really going to get caught in a place like this.
Right. Yeah, that's good, especially analyzing and being able to understand the baseline.
Baseline's everything.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and start this right back up. I'm sure we're gonna run into an ad here.
I see it.
Yeah, it's coming up.
Snickering Doors Institute.
What? I didn't even know he was here.
How are you here?
Yeah, I don't even recall how I got.
The Sonoran Desert Institute, if you're looking to get your start in gunsmithing, they're the people.
I got to do that. Shameless plug.
They'll also do this type of content for free. So big thank you to them. And of course, who's our favorite, Micah?
Primary Arms for sick optics, and
we can use the commercial breaks. We can just
awesome optics,
slam off the volume and use that as like a talking point right
there.
there.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
Turns your gun into a dry fire machine. Go and check them out. We love them. And of course, AEC Ammo for allowing us to train to get better. We'll be showing more of that stuff in future videos when it comes to survival. But with all that being said, talk is cheap and evasion is tough. So let's get into it.
Be a digital detective. Enroll in the new Google Cybersecurity Certificate to jumpstart your career in a high-growth field.
All right. So far, I think they are really good at putting out this type of content.
Dude, they kill it.
I've always thoroughly enjoyed Garantham's content.
He has, and maybe, a lot of it I'm sure has to do with his editors and stuff like that, but like just their way to tell a story and like get their information to fit that story and build that story around what they want to tell. It really makes for good entertainment and good knowledge.
Right.
All
right, I'm about to start it up.
All right, let's do it.
All right, credentialing. Why should you listen to us? So I spent early part of my Air Force career as a survival guy, an evasion guy, and then right here with me, I have my buddy Fife, who also did the same thing. Later on, I moved over to TAC-P, and Fife ended up doing a lot of the civilian sector. You want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, so I ended up doing a lot of civilian courses, both as OPFOR and then also assisting other courses in our own urban survival course that we do with Bear Solutions. So we've analyzed a lot of different urban environments, how to stay alive in them regardless of the situations that are going on, and yeah, it's been a good time.
And then in addition to that, I've taken a lot of civilian evasion courses within cities, spent a lot of time working with other people throughout the world on their tactics and how they kind of work on evasion out of cities. Again, this isn't stuff that's like wazoo. This isn't going to be anything that's like amazing knowledge. Stuff like this has been around for a long time. So don't think like the things that we're saying are in any way super novel or amazing. And you're like, I would have never thought of that. It's just a lot of common stuff that makes sense. And that when you put it together, it makes for a pretty good plan to get out of the city. So when we're talking about evasion, we're talking about an initial contact with somebody we don't want, or with something that we don't want, whether that be a natural disaster. I know you've done a lot of that work, or whether it be somebody bad, a terrorist attack. You're being invaded by a foreign country. That happened in Ukraine. This stuff isn't nearly as crazy as you'd think. And suddenly you find yourself needing to get out of the city. This is something you should be planning ahead of time. You should have met with your family. You should know, if I have to leave, we're not able to make contact with each other. If our house is destroyed, where do I go? Do I meet out in a forest somewhere, or where am I going to be going? This is going to help you understand which direction you need to travel. But when we're talking about breaking initial contact, so I go out, these guys.
All right, I'm going to pause here because he brought up something that is heavily overlooked here. And that is something that I put out on Instagram as well through my weekly, I want to call it a weekly skill challenge, but it's essentially a weekly task for the people on IG to kind of start off at the bottom and kind of build up a plan for multiple scenarios. And one of those was create a rendezvous plan with your family. And that's exactly what he's talking about here. All right. So that way, if something does happen, there's a criteria that gets met on this on the emergency side that your family understands that, one, if my wife is at home, chances are I'm going to want her to stay at fucking home. Yep. If it's bad enough that I need her to come get me, then there will be a pre-established, probably a primary, secondary, and even a tertiary, because obviously if I have one spot that I'm relying on, the world gets a say, life gets a say. So it could be the epicenter of where these unsavory groups or people are actually sitting. So I don't want her to go there and wait for me there. If she goes there and it is burned and I have no way to communicate with her, I'm going to immediately have her go to another spot. If I happen to roll up on that rendezvous point and I see all those people there, I'm going to understand right away that there's no way that she's there, because she should have seen the exact same thing that I saw, which means I'm automatically going to move to my next or my secondary rendezvous point to be picked up. The biggest thing is, if my family's not with me, I'm going to try my best to not even drag them into the situation. I'm going to be I'll be well armed, and I know my way out of the city, or I will find my way out of the city. And once again, since I have the ability to get in and out of places as I please, because I have that skill, I have a lot more options than the average person. And if I have to, and I feel better just waiting it out overnight, I will wait it out overnight. Because obviously you're exposing yourself to a lot of other things, right? Unsavory people, in this case, people that are trying to hunt you, policemen, because you're breaking curfew. Those are bad and can definitely end up with you in a hospital or worse. So, Chris, you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, and when you have these places planned out, actually have physical copies, right? And I say that because we have gotten so accustomed to the GPS being turned on. But as we've seen in a lot of these cities, whether it was the date that shall not be named down in Washington, D.C., or, some of these riots that have been going on, they will go out there and they use, electronic warfare, let's call it what it is, to essentially block out signals. So if you're not familiar with the area and you don't have some level of paper map, you're not going to know. You're not going to know where you need to go. So have these routes, and exactly like Sky Pirate said, I personally know that I can E&E faster out of an area than my loved ones are going to be able to find a way in to come and get me safely. Because if there is a curfew, probably going to be blocked on the roads, right? There's going to be some sort of checkpoint scenario going on. If you're not familiar with local customs and you don't know how to bribe someone, if you're in a foreign country or working out of a foreign country, you're probably going to go to jail because you didn't do it right. There's a lot of things that come into play there that we have to develop these skills, both the navigation skills and some of the soft skills of understanding culture and people. And that's what makes us the most successful at getting almost any situation that we find ourselves in, whether it's natural disaster or something that's man-made, like a riot or people hunting you in that case.
Absolutely. And I would say also realize, like, whatever you travel with or you have on your person on the daily, we call it everyday carries, right?
Yep.
Whatever you carry with you on an everyday basis is what you're going to have. That's it. Like, so that's why, like, the time to have cool niche pocket throw up in your pants, that's not going to do much for you. So having a very, I would say, a dedicated and also non-novel EDC, right? Like, I carry it with me everywhere I go. Like, I'm always happy. Doesn't mean I want to be engaging a crowd, right? Because even with my everyday carry, I'm carrying a max of, I don't know, anywhere from 34 to 45 rounds, right? Last time I checked, not enough for a fucking crowd. So not nearly.
Not at all.
So if I could not choose not to engage them, I'm going to choose not to engage them. And I'll find ways to move about the city without having to directly engage people. And that also means you're still very much under law, right? Cameras don't stop working, stuff like that. So killing people is still very much a crime unless it's in self-defense, and it better be really good for self-defense.
I mean, look at what's his name, the kid, Kyle Rittenhouse.
Kyle Rittenhouse, the Kenosha kid.
Perfect example of you couldn't have a more perfect scenario for him stacked in his favor. Like, from a legal standpoint, he did everything right, like absolutely everything. And he still had to go to court and had to duke this thing out. So it's better to avoidance is the number one tactic. That's what I'll say, especially when the odds are against you. Do not let your enemy dictate and set the pace. You have to set the pace, get out of there, and do what you need to do to survive.
100%. All right, I'm going to go ahead and start this back up.
Let's do it.
As the guns hop out and they're ready to kill me, I need to get away from them. So it's going to be very similar to what we talk about when we talk about rural evasion, or that evasion in the mountains like we were talking about in the last one.
So when you're trying to break contact with them, it can be anywhere from as fast as, or as far as about 10 meters to a mile. That's one of the issues that you see in urban environments is there's a lot of straight lines throughout a lot of the cities, especially in the US where we use the grid pattern. Other cities will have more of a mosaic feel to the design and structure of it, and it's easier to lose things in those areas. But with a grid, if you're in, like, I think one of the terms I heard was a linear danger area type thing, it's one of those things they can see straight down the entire thing. So you have to change up directions pretty frequently and quickly in order to really lose somebody behind you.
And what's nice with our initial movement is when we do it, like he was talking about, that 10 meters, we can simply round a corner. And if there's a lot of people, it's actually not that difficult to get lost in those people. The big thing is going to be on that initial movement. If you can, as soon as you break that initial contact with somebody, if you can change the way that you look, that's going to go a long way in helping you kind of get away, because there's going to be an initial description of you or an initial impression that they see. Hey, I see a guy with a blue shirt on. I see a guy with a gray shirt on. I see a guy with long hair. If we're able to change those things very quickly on that initial contact, that's going to be really, really important to do. So I'll do a quick demonstration of what an initial breaking contact could look like for a small movement. So if I'm breaking contact, I've seen them on the street, I've turned one corner, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to turn another corner, I'm going to change how I'm looking. So look over here as I'm moving, get that t-shirt off, and If I can, I'm then going to join whatever people I can see out there. So if I can head right onto the street from here, I'm able to look different and then blend with the crowd, and that's going to go a long way in breaking that initial contact. That's what one of the small movements is going to look like we were just talking about.
So one of the things also to consider is how much were you exposed? How long do they have eyes on you? Because they get more detail the more time that they have. So if they have been following you or seeing you for an extended period of time, then you have to go and change more of your appearance. However, if it's low light, it's dark, they only got a glimpse, you aren't going to have to change a whole lot. So it really just, it depends. And that's one of the most annoying answers to give, but it's true.
Right, what we're going to do right now is we're going to stay in these alleyways. We're going to break contact. We're going to move quickly when we are in these areaways, these straightaways where we're kind of off the main roads. When we're on the main roads, we're going to act more natural to blend in. Again, this is going to depend on your environment. If I'm in a war and everything's war-torn, well, sure, you're going to change your posture. But if things are less war-torn, maybe I'm being hunted singly within a city, then I'm going to need to learn how to blend it better. So in this case, we're going to consider that we're trying to blend a little bit better. We're trying to get to our family, which is a pre-designed meeting point out in the mountains around the city. So we're going to head out right now.
Most people have no clue that in 2023, the best way to make money on Amazon is not with physical products. It's Amazon's other company.
All right, brother, what do you got?
So that's great. It's a big reason why I like having a kind of a stuffable rain jacket in my backpack wherever I go. Is like one of the benefits is I can take that and it's big enough. The size is big enough where I can throw it over. If my backpack's not completely full, I can throw it over myself and my backpack, and it takes the backpack out of the line of sight like that. Like, of course, if you saw someone for long enough, you're gonna be like, oh, I think there's a backpack underneath that rain jacket. But like, if you turn that corner, throw something over you, get into that crowd, and whatever you're wearing was a different color than that rain jacket, it's gonna really throw people off the trail. The same thing with hats. Like, I think you should, people should be carrying a hat for a bunch of different reasons, but having a hat and being able to take that off real quick and tuck it underneath your shirt, it will, when someone notices something on your head, that's usually the first thing they're drawn to. Guy in black hat, and they're calling it out like that. So I think it's great. It's also another good reason why, it doesn't hurt to carry a medical mask around with you and pretend.
I was going to say that.
Yep. Pretend, that or a bandana, be able to pretend and throw it over your face. And it's, anything to protect your privacy is not a bad thing. I think privacy is going to be worth a whole lot more than people realize in the coming years.
It'll be gold, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, man, that's definitely it too. And that's why the baseline is pretty important, right? If you're dressing so far outside of the norm, the first thing they're going to be drawn to is how you're dressed. So it might not even be necessarily the hat first, but let's just say you're in, I don't know, Florida and you're wearing a fucking flannel. That's probably the first thing that's going to stick out because it's hot as shit in Florida pretty much all year round. Yep. Most people are wearing cutoff sleeves, shorts, and other things like that, right? So you're already above the baseline right now by how you're dressed. So that's the first thing that they're going to be drawn to is the fact that you're not dressed like anybody else in this area. So,
100%.
Yeah. So I think that's probably that definitely lends credence to what they're saying. Being able to change that stuff in a really fast motion, I don't think most people are carrying. Once again, this is going to go back down to what are you actually carrying, right? Yep. Are most people carrying an extra shirt? Are they carrying, a specific type of hat? Are they doing this stuff to where they have the option? So it's like if you're not carrying this stuff already, you don't have the option. So I think that's going to be pretty huge, right?
And I'm like, it's good. It's good policy. Like for me, having a rain jacket is just good to have on you. If you never know. Like where I live at, we get little downpours here and there, and they're not, popping up on the Doppler anytime soon. Yeah. But you get caught out in one, it's a bad time. And so that it goes back to what's important for your everyday carry, like you were saying earlier. Make sure you have stuff that you actually use. I see so many of these people that are carrying aesthetic knucks and different things. Hey, if that's your thing, that's your thing. It's all good. But make sure you have the other stuff too. Every grown man should probably have a multi-tool nearby.
Yes.
I use mine constantly. That and my flashlight are probably the two most common things I use.
Huge.
Oh, yeah. I love it. that thing is so useful, especially, you know, anytime I'm working around the house or going under the house or on the roof. But like, it really comes down to just being prepared as an individual,
Yes.
having the things you need on you, so that if you do find yourself in any situation, you have something to work with.
Yep. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and skip this next ad, and we'll hop right back into it.
Hell yeah.
Let me go ahead and take that.
So what we've done, we've broken initial contact right here. So we've gotten to a place where we're kind of out of sight, out of mind of everyone that we've seen that could possibly report our location. So at this point, what we need to do is take stock of what we've got going on. We're going to do what we talked about before, and that's going to be your initial height site. Mike, do you want to talk to that?
So in the initial high site, you're trying to review what you have for equipment, what you have as far as gear, sustenance, sustainment equipment, things of that nature. If the weather's changing on you, you know, change with it as you need to. Also, another good time in order to change your appearance again. Trying to top off on things as you're going through, like realizing my water bottle's empty, things of that nature. Trying to take stock of what we need, what we have, and what we can do from here.
Exactly. So a big question might be, what do I need? So for example, if I'm heading out the woods after this and I'm going to go get with my family, do we have a cache of equipment out there? Do I have water bottles? Do I have those things that I need so that I can actually survive? If not, I might need to collect those as I'm going throughout the city, as I'm getting those water bottles and going forward. Again, this is a time we're going to change our disguise. This could also be a time to make comms. You want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. So for comms inside of a city, there's a couple of different options. Most people are going to have a cell phone with them. Problem with cell phones is that, the majority of the ones out there right now, you can't turn off. So if you can get old burner phones, it's really nice because you can actually take the battery out. One, it makes the phones last longer. You can swap out the batteries frequently, and it just extends the life of that tool. If the phone towers aren't working, then you also have backups that you can do using radios, whether it's going to be analog, DMR, things of that nature. The big problem with dealing with radios inside of larger cities, because of buildings and all that sort of stuff, is you get a lot of bounce off of those buildings with the direct radio frequency signals. So unless you're hitting repeaters or anything else like that, it's going to be really difficult to get line of sight from your radios to communicate, especially when you're surrounded by concrete. So the other option that you could also do is fun little tools like mesh networks. Mesh networks are great. You can program them into your phones. You can set them up, buy them yourself. Meshtastic is one that I know off the top of my head. And you can program them to send text messages to anybody that you want that's allowed to be on your network. They can have them full AES, whatever, encrypted. And you can still have a secure network to communicate. Even when the cell towers are down, radio frequencies aren't an option. As long as you have enough nodes between you and the people you want to talk to, you can still stay in contact.
Exactly. And now, speaking a little bit more to the initial height site right here. So if we can get far away from people, so I want to have both top cover and I want to be far away so that there's not going to be as many people around. The reason for the top cover, of course, is more than likely you're going to have some type of aerial assets looking for you, especially UAVs in the city. I mean, cities are only so big, and that is perfect coverage for UAVs. So that's something you want to make sure that you are thinking about. And again, when it comes to this isn't going to be the best height site. So from here, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about some movement techniques, and we're going to go into some of our basic movement to get to a better height site, to somewhere we could possibly sleep and possibly collecting some of those.
All right, pause that for a minute. Let's go ahead. All right, so real quick. So background on myself and for Chris. I've been an infantryman for almost a decade now. And Chris is a former recondo and sniper from the United States Marine Corps. So we know a little bit about hide sites. Chris, you want to hop into that a little bit, bud?
I mean, I wouldn't call that a hide site.
That is definitely not a hide site. Okay,
like,
I thought we were on the same page.
yeah. I'll tell you, the best urban hide sites, if cameras aren't your number one concern and you just want to get out of visibility, is public restrooms. You run the risk, though, if you get in there getting cornered if someone's behind you.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to be smart about that, and you have to make the best thing to do in that scenario is make sure it's a heavily crowded area and you can try to lose people in the crowd if you do need to pop into a bathroom and kind of do whatever. The other good places are just like really crowded areas where you can get lost in the crowd and then find yourself, a little quiet, back business room somewhere in a public shared space like a library or something like that. But, where they're at, I wouldn't call that a hide site. That's a little rally point. That's what that is.
Yeah. Once again, this isn't to nitpick whatsoever, and
No.
So I understand that. This
Terms
might
are
not
important,
be.
though.
Terms are very important. Nomenclature is important because they mean things. And also, if you can afford not to be outside, and you're talking about UAVs now, like good night, and like that's a lot more grim of a situation than that's being passed off right now.
Yeah.
I would say, because if you have aerial assets, chances are if they've ever locked onto you, they're probably still have a beat on exactly where you're at right now, which is, once again, shameless plug. You don't know how to get into spaces, and we saw this in Iraq when we were facing ISIS after they had been building a defense for almost three plus years, almost. And guess what they did? They tunneled underneath houses. They literally, any houses that were connected, they made sure that they were bridged together so that way they could move out of sight from UAVs. But the biggest thing is that they were inside a structure, inside structures. If you were outside of a structure, like granted, they have overhead cover, which is great. That is awesome. They're in a nice dark space, which is dope. But I know for a lot of those places, a lot of homeless people are around in those spaces too. So you might not even be alone rolling into that space. So do you pop back out because you're not alone, or do you try and bribe the guy that's there? So I mean, he doesn't know anything about you, but he can be like, "Yo, just like, while we're here, shut up," or just act normal. But yes, this is not a hide. I would say I hate saying this because I feel like I'm nitpicking them, and I don't want to come off as
no. I mean, a hide site is basically almost like a safe room in a lot of ways.
Yes.
Like the way you enter in, the way you leave is typically different. You enter in a point where you have very low visibility and you can remain there for an extended period of time.
Yep.
That's really the kind of book definition of what it is. So like, it is what it is. Like it doesn't matter as long as you get what they're trying to tell you, what the purpose of that place is, and they're shooting this obviously probably in like one day. But just know that like if you were to say a true hide site would be a place that you already have pre-established, like a stash house. If we're going to give it a urban name, you probably have a stash house, or a key to an apartment for a buddy that and he's just like, hey, anytime you want to come into the city, you need a place to crash it. That's more of a hide site. But hey, the information is solid. I will say, trying to build your own meshtastic network over a long enough distance is going to be really expensive, and you're going to have to work out some unique ways of conquering that problem with like waterproof boxes, solar panels, batteries, and then the network node itself. And so if you're not like centrally located and everybody's kind of close to you within a mile, it's going to get pricey real quick.
Yeah. And once again, if this is not a part of your everyday carry, or maybe like you just so happen to be carrying it coming out of your fucking truck or something like that, maybe your vehicle's still downtown, but it's just not accessible. The chances of like, and granted, he did say off of a cell phone, so that's definitely doable for sure.
Yeah.
Which is great. If you're talking about radios, though, a little bit different. I heard AES encryption and DMR, and so it's like, all right, well, or was it software defined radio too? So it's anywho, pretty solid stuff being put out so far. So
yeah, definitely, it's giving you a lot of places to look and research on for sure.
I may break this into two parts.
I was gonna say let's do two parts. That way, I can go up and spend a little time with the missus.
Understood. Is there a certain spot you want to kind of cap off at, roughly 15 minutes?
Yeah, that works great, man. We'll basically wrap up from there and then pick it up on the next run.
All right, sounds good. All right, I'm getting ready to start it back up.
Applies as we go along the way.
Recordings
just
got
better.
We could have just like.
I'm so excited to announce that.
All right, nice. This is the one I'm really interested in.
So the big thing with movement is going to be, it's completely going to depend. It's going to depend on what's happening in the city. Are we in a war-torn environment? Are we in an environment where the city is starting to decay? There's general societal collapse. The point is the more we blend in, the better. So the biggest thing about movement in the city is don't do shit that's going to draw attention to yourself. So for example, if you're out walking, like, who's doing this shit? Like, that doesn't make any sense. You shouldn't be sneaking around. Sneaking around in an urban environment is not at all like sneaking around the woods. You're like walking real low or anything like that. You need to walk like this is what you do every day. You're walking to work. You're walking to your house. Walk like this is just part of your daily life. Try to act natural. If you are in any way sticking out, that's going to be a problem. That comes with movement and flow of people as well.
So when you're dealing with how people are moving, most Americans have a habit of having really good posture. Mike over here has been working a lot on his posture to help with his neck and everything, right? So he stands really up straight, chest out, eyes forward, neck forward, shoulders rolled back, puffing his check in a good gait in the step, right? It's great for him, right? But most places he's going to stick out like a sore thumb. So sometimes you have to roll your shoulders up, slouch a little, just walking around with your head slightly tilted down, looking just a couple feet in front of you as you're going through with glancing up, and that really doesn't draw a lot of attention. Eye contact is what really pulls people in. So one of the other things is the flow, like you were talking about before. The flow of people is like water. You don't want to be the salmon trying to swim upstream because then the bear's going to get you, right? So you need to go with the flow, and if it's in the right direction, cool. If not, oh well, just use it to cross over to the other side, take another avenue, pick another route, and keep moving.
When I've done evasion exercises at the civilian side with various people, I've done things like putting on a high-vis construction vest and just walking with construction workers towards a construction site. So I'm getting through a lot of different areas. I look like I'm just part of the construction crew, breaking off when I need to. The point is, adapt yourself to whatever's happening. People have stripped down to less clothes, so they look like they're working out or out on a run. It doesn't matter, but the time of day definitely does. And the time of day is going to be completely dependent on what city you're in, where you're at, and when people typically move. If there's like a curfew because there's military blockades going on, then you're taking a big risk by moving after that curfew. All things that you're gonna have to think about when you're moving. Generally, we say move at night. That's generally best. It's harder to recognize you, and it's just gonna be more difficult. Think about going out with your friend. So like if I'm going out with Charles right here, and we're gonna go see some movies, you can look at Charles. Let's look at Charles right there. Now, Charles is pretty recognizable. I know his gait, I know how he steps, but if he's still far away and like we're waiting for all our friends, we're kind of like, is that Charles? Is that Charles? Do you think that's Charles? Like, oh, that's Charles. Yo, what's up, Charles? So the point is when somebody's far, it's kind of hard to recognize who they are. You're not going to be crazy about avoiding people, but if we can keep a little bit of distance to make it a little bit harder to identify, that's going to go a long way. So right here, we'll just do a couple of basic movements to show you what it should look like. This is pretty simple when it comes to moving within your urban environments. And again, try not to be on those main streets when you're moving. Cut through when you can, so long as it's not completely unnatural.
Here's a demonstration on how to walk.
Yeah, right.
So a couple notes there. If you notice, me and Mitchell over here were lagging behind each other. We weren't just walking right next to each other. We kept a lot of distance between each other. And that's something you should do. Another thing you notice, we were slouching. We changed our posture. I changed my gait, the way I'm walking. These are all things that you can do. There's really not a whole lot to it. It seems silly watching it or doing it for the first time, but this is something that you can practice. I do this all the time, where if I'm in a city, I'll try to change the way I kind of appear. I'll change my posture, change my gait. How easy is it for you to do these things? Becoming a different person really doesn't take that much. And having these little kind of characters that you can slip into when you're walking can kind of help you get into those different patterns of posture and those different patterns of gait. At least that's what I use. What about you, Ben?
Yeah, that is, let's see.
And let's take a note here that there's gait tracking software. Like
yes.
That exists, not just in Punisher. Like that exists. It is a well-known thing. They're using it right now in China. like in this very moment. So you have to know that there's a element of theatricality that you have to learn in order to exist in environments that are not natural to you.
100%. And as far as like adopting a different walking style, members of the military, could even be cops. I say it's a little bit less with cops, but you do walk in a very strict like pattern. That's because obviously you've had marching kind of pounded into your skull through. It could be 22 weeks basic. Even when you get to your units, you might march a little bit. So which is why like when you move over to like a soft unit or something like that, you kind of have to lose them. You have to lose some of that because you may be operating in an environment where you don't want to be looking like you're the military. So you have to kind of like undo a bunch of stuff that's been kind of burned into you, as far as like how you walk, your posture, how fast you walk. People don't realize that too. Like I walk extremely fucking fast, even though I have flat ass feet. But like I even noticed, like even with my wife, is like, or when you're trying to do something or you're trying to move from point A to point B and you're on a mission, so to speak, you walk really fast, right? So you
have to force myself to slow down.
You have to force You have to like force yourself to slow down because you're like, yo, I need to bring it back, reel it in for a second because it looks like I'm on my way to do something. So I need to be looking very laissez-faire, very just kind of like, fuck it, dude, I'm just walking, bro. Just it is a very real thing. So that's actually a really cool thing that they mentioned.
And another big thing too is take a look around, right? Like take your cues from where you're at. I came from California, moving to Philadelphia. Like a California personality does not match a Philadelphia. Like it is complete opposite. People are like, "Why are you so happy?" Like literally, people were saying, "Like, why are you so happy all the time, bro?" I'm like, "I'm just living life, man. I'm out of the military. Like it's a good day." And I had to learn that like the East Coast just isn't that vibe. Like people are different. Like once you get to know them, you realize that a lot of times being an asshole is kind of a front. It's kind of like to see if you have thick enough skin to handle their type of abrasive personality or what their vibe is, right? Yeah. And vibe is really the perfect word because you have to understand like the kind of where they're at and then blend into that. And it's city to city, it's country to country, right? The way Europeans walk in Italy is completely different than the way Germans walk. Like that's completely different. So
absolutely. Same thing with sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and well, it's just taking notice that like that's the difference. The big thing I noticed when working like in with conventional forces versus unconventional forces, right? Is your unconventional dudes, the reason why they're so good is they're able to pick up on the small details very, very quickly and adjust based off of those and adapt based off of those. And if you're going to go into a new environment, that's that understanding, like you said, that baseline is so important. And being like, how can I adjust myself to what other people around me are doing? And then people won't notice me like they do now.
Yep. And it's no different from like language, right? Exactly. You have a base language, like ours is, like we all speak English across the board, but if you go talk to someone in Macon, Georgia versus someone up in, upstate New York, vastly fucking different. Same language, different dialect. Completely fucking different dialect. It's like sometimes they might not even feel like they're speaking English, but they're speaking English.
Or even the cultural side, right? Like the difference between like hanging out with a bunch of infantry Marines or like hanging out with a bunch of cats from the Air Force. Like, dude. The first time someone who doesn't know Marines hangs out with a bunch of Marines and they get that first like something like that, like people are like, what the hell is wrong with these guys? It's a cultural language. Like you have to be a part of it to understand the lingo and to realize when people are like, trying to push buttons or just, messing around with you.
Yeah. No, man, that's all legitimate. I'm enjoying this shit out of the series so far.
Dude, they're doing a good job.
They're doing a really good job. And
I think I will say that pink water bottle definitely stands out. So if I was trying to follow it, I'd be like, look out for a guy with the pink water bottle. That thing was popping off the back there. That was a big red flag for me. But beyond that, I was like, they're doing a good, like this is such a good introduction class to just get people outside of their own head and
Agreed.
thinking about what they look like. That's a thing I used to do with people that I was training a lot. I'd be like, if you looked at you outside of you, if you saw you walking down the street, how would you break you down? And that's a great way to start analyzing your tics and the way you carry yourself, the way you dress, and starting to modify things if you want to tone down certain things. Like if I don't want people to think I'm in good shape or anything like that, I'm going to wear a shirt a size too large because it's naturally going to make my frame look smaller.
Yep.
And it's going to really tone down how people view me in terms of like, oh, is this a threat? Is this, what's up with this guy? Versus if I walk in with a UFC shirt on and it's, a size medium.
Medium, yeah. Oh man.
I mean, that's the normal size of the UFC shirts I see.
That's the only size it comes in.
Right.
All right, man. Well, we go ahead and plug yourself real quick. Let everybody know where they can find you. This is going to be part 1 of 2 for this video series. We're going to come back and obviously do the second part, and then I'm going to clip up this video so people aren't watching 46 long minute reviews of a 32-minute video.
Yeah. Easy plug. My name is Chris, also known as the Emergency Expert on IG. I run a business that specifically focuses on emergency preparedness, along with some of these other topics. And it's called Get Prepared. It's at getpreparedllc.com is where the site is going to be. And I teach courses, I run live classes, and my main focus is just getting people more sustainable, building that mindset and building that resilience. And so, and always, just happy to share knowledge and help people on their journey to getting to where they want to be in terms of any of those things.
Awesome. For you guys that don't know me, I'm Marcus, better known as Sky Pirate Actual on IG. I am the owner and CEO of Cloaked Entry Co. We are one of probably 5 other companies that conduct covert entry or just non-destructive entry training for the prepared citizen, first responders, and military. So you guys can see courses in our schedule over at www.cloakedentryco.com, or you can go over to IG. I'm under Sky Pirate Actual. My wife, who's the other half of Cloaked Entry Co., who's also instructor, is at MySpace 2.0. And then we have our business page at Cloaked Entry Co.
Power couple.
Yeah, dude. We're trying. Thanks for joining us, guys. Please drop your comments and stuff like that down below. And if you like this, go ahead and subscribe. We're going to keep on doing this, man. Me and Chris have been friends for a while, and we're going to keep on. We're going to keep on pushing this community stuff.
We're going to upgrade that gray matter. You stick around. We're going to upgrade that gray matter for you.
Without a doubt. All right, brother. Well, I appreciate your time.
Till the next one, brother.
Till the next one. And recording.